Hello everyone, my name is Elaine and I want to welcome you to my Unison League Berserkers Guide Part 1. This will help you grow accustomed to the game and give you some advice on the Berserker class. Berserker is one of Unison League's extra classes. The devs classify with the following words: sacrifice yourself for overwhelming firepower and crush your enemies into the dust. Demonstrate your true strength when fighting other players. The Berserker is a DPS or damage per second class. It is your job to destroy your enemies, whether that be monsters or other players. The best Berserker builds emphasize weapon and monster gear over defensive gear. Basically, you want to do everything you can to unlock all your monsters and weapon slots. Then use anything that's left over on your defensive gear slots. If you can, try to make sure there's 5 to 10 cost points left over after you've equipped all the gear you wish to use, so that you can easily equip new and better gear pieces when you spawn them. If this is not possible, don't sweat it. There are tons of ways to gain cost later in the game. Since this class follows the basic DPS build, it'll be easier to transition to if you started off as one of the DPS classes like the Lancer or Mage, as opposed to a support class like the Cleric, which tends to have a tankier build. Since the Berserker gains passive boosts to both magical and physical attack from axes, scythes, guns, staves, and relics, it'll be a bit easier to transition to than the other extra classes, since you're bound to have a few on-class weapons to carry over from your main class to this extra class. Having access to several different on-class weapons can make building your character difficult, however. What are the best stats? The first ring has a nice balance of physical and magical attack abilities. The second favors physical attacks and also includes some blended or hybrid attacks, those that have both a physical and magical component. So the easiest answer is to pick the build that incorporates the build from your starting class. For example, if you started as a mage, keep your mage build and pick abilities that deal magic damage. If you find that you prefer to use abilities that don't favor your starting set, meaning you started as a mage but prefer the physical attack abilities the Berserker has to offer, slowly adjust your set until you've built one that's favorable to your particular playstyle. In other words, add more axes and scythes over time as you spawn more and infuse them if you can. Now let's talk about monsters. Magical attack and physical attack are the stats that determine your monster's damage output, so equipping monsters with these stats will help them do more damage if you're finding it lacking. With that being said, if you didn't start off as an archer, you're unlikely to have good monsters with these particular stats, especially monsters with their potential unlocked, so simply carry over whatever you have from your main class and transition to newer monsters with these stats if you'd like. It all depends on your needs. Helms and Armor are the defensive gear pieces that Berserkers gain passive boosts from. Interestingly, they get a boost to magical defense as opposed to physical defense like the Lancer, for example. Hats and clothing tend to have higher magical defense than physical, whereas helmets and armor have the opposite, higher physical defense than magical. I feel as though this was done because the passive boosts you get for this class are far higher than the starting classes. Essentially, having the passive affect the stat that tends to be lower for these gear pieces is the dev's way of balancing the fact that the boost itself is so much higher. If you started off as a cleric, mage, or archer, you may not have a lot of armor or helm gear. When you first start transitioning to the Berserker class, you may have to mix and match your defensive gear. That's okay, you can swap them out for an ideal set as you acquire more gear and continue to grow. Now that you know a bit more about the Berserker, its purpose and basic build, I want to take some time to talk about all of the shiny new abilities you've unlocked. I'm not going to talk about passive abilities, the important ones have already been covered. That leaves the non-passive abilities, the things you can equip in your sets. If you've watched my other class guides, you already know that I have a typical format for these videos. But I'm going to change things up today. Instead of suggesting sets, I'm going to discuss each ability, giving you my thoughts on it, allowing you to find the best set for your specific build and playstyle, which will probably be pretty battle-oriented when playing as a Berserker. For sake of ease, I'm going to be discussing the unenchanted version of each of the following abilities. Now, I'm going to jump right into it, starting with the Berserker's first ring, the Berserker. First up is Blood Impact, which has a low cooldown of 4 seconds and lower cost of 9. It consumes 5% of your max HP. Its added effect is that with an ability power of 140, it deals physical damage to one enemy twice. This makes it best for former soldiers and lancers. It cannot be used when your remaining HP is 5% or less. This ability isn't bad. It has a gloriously low cost and cooldown, but it consumes HP to use as well. This can be problematic if you don't have a cleric on your team, good healing monsters, or if you don't keep an eye on your health, because it can make it much easier to pick you off in PvP situations like guild battle, and in tougher quests since your health has already been reduced. With that being said, it does have a decent AP, and it hits its target twice, which is pretty good. Next is Shower of Carnage, which has a low cooldown of 5 seconds and lower median cost of 12. It has an ability power of 120 and attacks one enemy 2 to 5 times for physical damage with a success value of 80. It has an added effect. Its ability power increases for every 5% of HP you are missing. It also has a combo effect. When used after Blood Impact, the success value increases to 100. This ability is a bit of a mixed bag. It has a low cooldown and a lower median cost, which is good. Its ability power isn't bad, and it hits its target multiple times. The problem is this can be 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. Since fate dictates your hit count, you can really suffer in the damage output department if you're an unluckier player who often only lands a few hits, as opposed to the maximum number of hits. The ability also has a 20% chance to miss unless used in combination, which is not something I appreciate. Again, because it leaves a lot up to chance. Finally, this ability grows stronger when your health declines. This can be a good thing, but at the same time, this isn't an ability which consumes HP to help it scale and take advantage of this aspect of its description. Furthermore, it isn't clear just how much the ability scales up with HP loss, only that the ability power does increase for every 5% of total HP you are missing. So it could literally be an AP point for every 5% of your health, which is basically negligible and absolute crap for all we know. Third on our list is Dark Elimination, which has a low cooldown of 6 seconds and median low cost of 13. It has an ability power of 100 and attacks one enemy randomly with physical damage or magic damage 5 times. It has an added effect. It reduces your physical and magical defense by 20% for 10 seconds and increases your physical and magical attack by 20% for 10 seconds. I'm not a fan of this one. It's just too much of a gamble. Although it has a lower cooldown and fairly low cost, it does either physical or magic damage. If you lack a balanced attack build, something we see most often in archers from the basic classes, your damage output can suffer severely when performing this attack if you wind up performing damage in the stat you don't have the higher stat in. So physical damage with the typical mage's build, for example. The fact that you hit your target 5 times is nice though. That can mean a lot of damage if you get lucky, and I imagine is the dev's way of balancing a skill whose damage output relies so much on a balanced attack build and sheer dumb luck. The ability's added effect can also be worrying and something that you need to keep an eye on and manage. Although the effect is a short-lived 10 seconds, berserkers really need to manage their AP and are often in a weakened state because of the abilities they use. So reducing their defenses can exacerbate a pre-existing problem and make them super susceptible to death, especially if they do not have a cleric's aid, for example. With that being said, the added damage output from boosted attack stats could be helpful when it comes to finishing off an enemy. Again, it's really just something that needs to be considered, managed, and watched in order to keep abilities such as this leading to a player's untimely demise. Next up is Raging Pain, which has a lower median cooldown of 8 seconds and lower median cost of 12. It has an ability power of 160 and deals magic damage that penetrates damage reduction and damage reflection effects to one enemy. This is a great ability for former mages and clerics especially, although mainly mages because of their builds. It has a lower and manageable cost and cooldown and doesn't consume one's HP to use. It has decent AP and bypasses both damage reduction and reflection effects, allowing you to burst through mere shields and reach your full damage potential, especially when boosted by things such as a monster's effects. The only real downside is that it only affects one enemy. Last but not least is Kill Dance, which has a low cooldown of 6 seconds and median cost of 16. It applies bleed to your character for 10 seconds. Bleed is a status ailment which decreases the target's current HP in intervals. It can be cleared by some cleric healing abilities, etc. Kill Dance has an added effect. It deals magic damage 5 times to a random target with an ability power of 130. The target changes with each attack. It has a combo effect. When used after Kill Dance, it deals magic damage to a random target 5 times with an ability power of 150, a 20-point increase over the non-combo version. It has an added effect. It increases your critical hit chance by 20% for 10 seconds. I have mixed feelings about this one. I like its low cooldown, but I'm not a fan of its cost. Furthermore, I'm not a fan of its bleed effect. Although this is short-lived, it makes your character more vulnerable. It has a decent attack power, and I like that it hits its target multiple times. I also appreciate that it has the chance to combo to help increase its damage output, but it's a bit hard to get it to combo when you have to keep using it after itself, over and over again. I also appreciate the fact that it gives you the chance to potentially increase damage output temporarily with its combo effect added effect, which increases your critical hit chance. And that concludes my Unison League Berserkers Guide Part 1. Part 2 will be posted next week and discuss the class's second ring. I hope you found my guide helpful and feel better prepared to play Unison League. I wish you all the best of luck and thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe and hit that bell so you'll know what's up, and leave a comment if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help, and we'll be adding more class guides over time to continue to expand your breadth of knowledge. Happy gaming, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye guys!